Hulk Hogan made a rare independent wrestling appearance in Brantford, Ontario recently for Championship Wrestling International, and prior to the event, Hogan engaged in a media scrum, including Fight Network.
You've recently been talking about kind of getting that itch back after all these back operations and considering a match in the ring. I mean, tell us how you're feeling right now, and I mean, you know all the extensive damage you've done to your back. What is the thought process at this point of risking that health at this part when you have done so much?
Well, it's a calculated risk. You know, it's not like, oh my gosh, he's an idiot with all the back surgeries. He's going to go wrestle in Brantford tonight, and if he gets knocked down, he'll be in a wheelchair. It's not that story. If I do get in the ring, it's a calculated risk. These guys are professionals, and instead of getting body slammed, somebody can hit me in the throat, rake me in the eye. I could crumble down to the ring, or I could take a bump on the back of my neck and shoulders and not hurt my lower back. There's a lot of ways to do it, and if you think of the risk versus reward, it doesn't matter. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, if you think of the risk versus reward, it does matter. It's a pretty foolish thing to think about wrestling after 8 back surgeries. But then there's also the love of the business and how I love being around the guys and love being around the fans and being around you guys. So I'm torn between what really makes sense and what I feel. So I'm like, man, I'd love to get in the ring tonight, you know, or I'd love to, you know, tag with, you know, Sting, or I'd love to wrestle Sting. So it probably has a lot to do with ego, which I try not to get involved with. I like to take ego when it comes up and put it on the wall and bracket it and go back to what makes sense, you know. So it doesn't make a lot of sense when you ask the question, but to me, it's a consideration at this point.
Also, what are some of the thoughts right now as you guys are rebranding into Impact Wrestling? I mean, you guys have a very loyal television audience every single week. In terms of pay-per-view, are you a proponent of maybe lessening the shows, or do you think the monthly model is working? Because that seems to be a big part of the television viewers aren't buying the pay-per-views.
Well, a lot of it's got to do with awareness and the fact that, you know, we can get to the people. I mean, like if I go in my hotel room in Chicago, there are certain cable networks that are on, like USA. There's no Spike TV. I mean, a lot of it depends on who you can get to and how you can reach. There's a lot more than just the fans aren't buying it. There's more to the equation than that. That's a very shallow statement, and that's not a fact. The people that see it are buying it. There's just not enough people seeing it. So, you know, that's what it is. It's creating awareness, a marketing plan. If we're with Spike TV, we need to figure out a way to help boost them up the ladder, you know. I don't know how many cable networks there are in the United States. I don't know if there's 25 or 35, you know, but in the paper it shows you who the top 10 are, you know, and the top 20. So if we could get Spike up to that #1 position, the whole equation would change on how many people are buying it, and it would change the perception, and someone wouldn't say, well, no one's buying it. You know, the people that see it are buying it. So it's creating that awareness to make more people aware that the product's there and that they can get it, and, you know, that when they walk in a hotel room in Brantford, you know, that the Spike Network will be on their TV. There's a lot to it, brother.
What do you feel are some of the most important things in terms of awareness? Because, I mean, Spike TV is still a network that's in 90 million or so homes, and it seems that with TNA, I mean, what have you viewed over the last year and a half, changes you'd like to see implemented in 2011 to get to that next level?
Well, you know, changes that I would like to see implemented when I first came in, I thought we could do within a 6-month time. Now that I understand all the variables, which I didn't understand. I didn't understand the awareness. I didn't understand how much money was or wasn't spent on marketing. I didn't understand how much money was or wasn't spent by the investors. Now that I take everything in, I realize that this is a long, slow roll. And, you know, like I said, TNA's been around not even 10 years. I don't know if the WWE's been around 80 years or 100 years, because I know Vince had it. Vince has it, his father had it, his grandfather was involved in it. So you can't mix apples and oranges, but there are a lot of changes that should happen right away in my mind and a lot of the fans' minds. Well, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? It's not that simple as just taking the belt and putting it on whoever, Jay Lethal or Matt Hardy, because you have to look at the numbers, you have to look at, you know, the minute by minutes, you have to look at so many things. It's not just, you know, I think as Hulk Hogan, I might know as much about the real wrestling business as you do, maybe more, maybe less, but I didn't understand the whole monster that really comes along with this equation. You know, now I see it completely different than I ever have before, and it's a real slow process, but one of the big changes that a lot of people don't agree with, and a lot of people do agree with, is changing the name. Because I've had several business meetings when I walk in and I say, I'm with TNA Wrestling. And if I don't say it's total nonstop action, it takes me 10 minutes out of a business meeting to explain what TNA means, and it's not a strip club, you know. And so if you have to explain the first 10 minutes to a huge corporation like Chevrolet or McDonald's, you've already lost the deal if you have to do that. So just changing the name gives us a breath of fresh air. Even though some don't agree, and why'd you change the six-sided ring, and wrestling's meant to be in a squared circle, not an octagon, not a six-sided ring, not a playpen. You know, so there's a lot of things that people just don't understand because they haven't been hit with this tidal wave of information like I've been hit with.
You mentioned earlier the fact that, I mean, you do not do independent shows. Can you just tell us a bit about what struck you about the CWI and coming to do this show in Brantford?
Well, I talked to Brutus about it. Yeah, he was actually at my house a few months back, and he did a radio show, and I heard him talking. I said, give me that microphone. So I took the microphone and I said something to the radio guys, and I guess there was a huge response. And so then, you know, Brutus started telling me about plans in Canada and what was going on, and the fans weren't being serviced. They were getting all this wrestling on TV, but nobody was coming to the arenas. I said, my God, Canada is a monster market. It's more exciting to go to Canada than it is to hit these same old markets in the United States. And then all of a sudden I got a call from Nick Nitro, and we started talking. He told me what he wanted to do. He told me what he wanted to have on the card, and I said, man, if these guys perform, if these guys step up, this could be better than some of the biggest pay-per-views, than the Super Bowl of pay-per-views, if these guys really step up, you know. And I've never worked independents, and I said, you know what, let's give this a shot. You know, let's just see what happens. You know, I said, right now I'm not supposed to get in the ring and wrestle 4.5 months after back surgery, but let's go ahead and throw my name out there, see if people are interested in seeing me, and see what I can bring to the table, and see if I can help you. If not, and there's no buzz, well, then we can make the announcement a month slot, and I can always pull out if it doesn't work. You know, or I could come up for an autograph session the day before, but everything seemed to fall into place. And if it works like we hope it does, there could be a huge future to have the Canadian markets with consistent wrestling instead of just once a year or twice a year. That's what I'm hoping for.
Hall, just in terms of the Canadian market, I mean, what are some of your thoughts? Because even when the WWF in the mid-90s kind of dipped down in the U.S., Canada was always a very consistent base for the company to go to and tour at that time. And I mean, you know, right from Exhibition Stadium onwards with your drawing power here, that Toronto and Canada have always been very strong markets for professional wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it. I don't know how many times I've said it. I've said it on every interview. I said the fans here are more loyal than any fans I've seen. I mean, they woke me up. I mean, I was coming back from WCW. I hadn't been to the WWE for many years. I talked to Vince McMahon on the phone, and he says, Hogan, if you're coming back, you better really bring it. I'm going, okay, what does that mean? Things have changed. I need to bring it. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, if I really bring it and the fans are with me, they're going to be asking me to take it back. You know, and so when I went up, nothing changed. Nothing's changed. The fans are still loyal. They're still the most exciting fans. They're the most passionate. So, I mean, it's the same here, brother. These fans deserve a good product up here, and they deserve consistency. You just can't bring all these wrestlers on TV, you know, week after week and then just show up once a year. I mean, I actually feel that this market could handle a full-time menu of good wrestling. You know, that's what I believe anyway.